Chapter 41 Monday. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the same time, Keno and Lex were discussing the experiment back on the campus playground. Bang! A player knocked down his opponent and scored, and the crowd instantly erupted in cheers. We are the champions, the team members joined in, shouting and rushing to their coach, to celebrate. After the game and the cheers died down, walked alone into the sauna funded by Luthor Enterprises, even though Keno had publicly humiliated him, thick-skinned as ever, suppressed his resentment. Water splashed onto the hot stones, creating a cloud of green steam, inhaled deeply, looking blissful. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Come in, said, wrapped in a bath towel and lounging in the armchair. Click. Principal Guan, in a suit and tie, entered the sauna. The heat made him frown. Coach what? Yeah, barely opened his eyes, glanced at Principal Guan, and frowned. What do you want? We need to talk. Principal Guan crossed his arms. A student reported that you leaked midterm exam questions to the football team. They'll have to accept a 2-week suspension. 2 weeks, What's voice shot up. The championship game is next week. Listen, Principal Guan, maybe we can let them finish the game first, then serve the suspension. Impossible. Principal Guan shook his head. Cheating is shameful, And because you offended Keno Luthor, the Luthor Group cut our funding in half. His tone hardened. The only reason I haven't fired you is because I'm giving you a break. This is non-negotiable. Tell them to be ready for the suspension. With that, Principal Guan turned and left, leaving fuming, as the door closed, finally lost it, roaring, Keno, it's always Keno Luthor. He clenched his fists and punched the sauna wall. Instantly, flames ignited and spread across the entire wall. What stared in disbelief, then looked down at his hands. A crazy idea popped into his head. His black eyes reflected the flames. Keno Luthor, you'll pay in blood. Anyone who gets in my way will die. Monday is a day everyone hates. Did you hear? The football game last night was insane. Little Black Pete looked bummed. Too bad I was in the hospital from the fright and missed it. Peter felt embarrassed thinking about how he was the only one who fainted. Yeah, but Coach what's got a terrible temper. Chloe held up a newspaper with a picture of yelling at a player in the rain. Just then, Coach led a group of football players downstairs, gathering them to listen to his speech. Sensing he was being watched, Keno glanced over and locked eyes with who quickly looked away. That old guy is giving me major stink eye. Keno's expression didn't change. He focused his eyes, using his powers to scan What's body, and a knowing look came over him. Clark spotted Lana in the crowd, looking angry and arguing with Did you hear? Chloe whispered to Keno. Leaked midterm questions to his players. The school's planning an investigation. I bet Lana's fighting with him about that. Clark looked at the football players with envy. He's a good coach, just got a short fuse. Joining the football team had always been Clark's dream, but his parents were on his case lately, and he didn't want to cause any trouble. While they were talking, Lana stormed off towards the teaching building, books in hand. Hey, Lana, what's wrong? Clark called, running to her. They walked into the building together. Ugh. Seeing Clark run after Lana, Chloe scoffed. I don't get what's so great about her. Little Black Pete laughed. Jealousy is an ugly color on you. Everyone loves Lana. Liar. Chloe retorted, raising her voice. At least Geno's not all over her. Right, Keno? Chloe's question interrupted Geno's thoughts. Huh? What did you say? Keno turned to the blonde girl. I mean, do you like Lana, too? Chloe asked shyly, twirling her hair. Like her? Nah, she's Clark's crush. Keno shook his head. Stealing his friend's crush was a low blow. Besides, Lana's dating history was enough to scare anyone away. Then what were you thinking about? Nothing. Gino shrugged, but his eyes flickered to What's hands. Using his clairvoyance, he could see green energy surging within them. So, the guy's got powers now, too. Gino grinned, sensing things were about to get interesting. As the group entered the classroom, Clark came back from his conversation with Lana, announcing, Lana quit the cheerleading team. Quit the cheerleading team? Chloe raised her eyebrows, pulled out a notebook, and muttered, Campus goddess quits cheerleading. This is big news. Clark looked annoyed. Lay off, Chloe. She's been through a lot lately and feels like she needs to find herself. Do something she's good at. Listening to Clark defend Lana, Gino sighed, patted him on the shoulder, and said, then here's your shot. Go for it. Clark was confused. What's that supposed to mean? He means ask Lana what she wants to do, and then. Chloe grinned and poked Clark in the ribs. Chapter 42. The sky cleared up, the rain stopped, and what stood up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Finally done. Chloe brushed her hands off, looking at the neatly stacked newspapers at her feet. She turned to Gino, smiling and winking. Thanks for the help, Richie Rich. No sweat, Gino said, shrugging as he read a newspaper. What you looking at? Chloe asked, curious. Gino flipped the paper so she could see. Lana's parents died in that meteor shower in town 13 years ago. Yeah, but she seems happy now. Chloe sighed. Clark even ditched club cleanup today for his goddess. Chloe was a little annoyed that Clark had run off to see Lana right after school. That guy's all about chasing tail these days. The two walked out of the building, chatting. A gust of night wind hit them, and Chloe shivered. Man, it's freezing out here. Help! A scream cut them off. Gino frowned, looking towards the sound. Through the thick wall and past some old cars, he saw a car engulfed in flames. He'd seen the person inside not long ago. Principal Guan. Gino grabbed a fire extinguisher, breaking the glass to get to it. Let's go get him. Chloe grabbed another extinguisher. Okay. They raced toward the parking lot on the right side of the building, where the fire was raging. The flames were a stark contrast to the deep darkness. Oh my God, someone's in there. Chloe gasped. She saw someone inside the car, desperately trying to escape. She gripped the fire extinguisher tightly, panicking. What do we do? Gino charged towards the car, pulling the pin on the extinguisher. Put out the fire, save him. Gino wasn't about to let someone burn to death when he could help it. He aimed the nozzle at the flames. Thick dry powder sprayed onto the fire, quickly bringing the flames under control. He tossed the empty extinguisher. He glanced inside the car. A minute had passed since the scream started, and the car was now an inferno. The interior was ablaze, thick black smoke billowing out. Flames were licking at Principal Guan's suit. Help me! Help me! Principal Guan screamed, his voice like something out of a horror movie. The flames were burning his skin, and he was pounding on the glass, trying to get out. Gino tried the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The doors jammed. He made a quick decision. Gino raised his fist. Bang! The window shattered. Gino grabbed the door and yanked. Gotcha! The door ripped open. Ignoring the smoke pouring out, Gino grabbed Principal Guan and pulled him out, throwing him to the ground. He grabbed the fire extinguisher Chloe handed him and put out the flames on the man's burning clothes. As the flames died down, Gino saw the man's charred face. His once dark hair was now a burnt and red scalp, making him look terrifying. Gino grimaced and looked away. He's got serious burns. Chloe, call 911. We need help. Okay. Chloe dropped the extinguisher and ran towards the building, where there were landlines to call the fire department and hospital. Weird flames. Gino stared at the nearly destroyed car, then looked at the building, a strange feeling washing over him. He could clearly see Coach What through the window of the office on the far right side of the first floor. Arson. Gino narrowed his eyes. Late at night. Wee-oo. Fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances raced towards the school. Across town, a silver Bugatti sped towards a two-story villa. Gino gently braked, stopping the car outside the house. "Thanks for the ride," Chloe said, opening the door. "Wanna come in?" "I'm home alone." "Nah." Gino got out and tossed her the keys. "Drive it back to school for me tomorrow." Chloe caught the keys, confused. "Wait, where are you going?" "Gotta check something out." Gino didn't hide it. He looked towards the school, where the lights were blazing. "I think that fire was deliberate." He had a suspect in mind, and knowing what's thirst for revenge, the guy might target him or his family. He had to go back and keep an eye on what. "What do you mean?" "Get some rest," Gino said, walking away. He disappeared into the night, leaving Chloe staring after him. On campus, the sudden fire had turned the school into a chaotic scene. Police officers were interviewing who was acting as a witness. The cunning fat man narrowed his eyes, pretending to be clueless. "I don't know anything, officer. I was watching TV in my office when the fire broke out. I'm really upset about what happened to Principal Guan." The officers nodded, looking sympathetic. "Yeah, it's terrible. Poor guy. He's got burns over 40% of his body. It's touch and go. We can only hope he pulls through." What made a listening gesture, looking regretful. "Yeah, God bless him." Since what was in his office when the fire started and the police found no signs of arson, they ruled it an accident caused by faulty wiring. With the case closed, What returned to his office, a smug smile spread across his face. He turned on his record player, putting on Napoleon's March. As the music filled the room, What held up a wine glass and took a slow sip. "Next." He raised his head, holding the glass in one hand and putting the other behind his back like a triumphant king. He looked at the town map on his office wall, his eyes settling on the gas station on the east side. "It's the damn Luthor family's turn." Chapter 43, Reaping the Consequences. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Late at night, on the highway near Smallville, honk, starred out a tanker truck full of gasoline cruised down the highway, a loud rock song blasting from the cab. The driver, Card, was banging his head to the beat, thump, starred out as the truck rounded a sharp curve. Card spotted an old pickup parked just ahead in the headlight beams. "Damn it," he muttered. "What idiot stops in the middle of the road, honk." Honk, Card laid on the horn, the sound cutting through the night, but nobody answered. "What's going on?" Card frowned, glancing at the time. He had a deadline for the delivery, otherwise, he'd lose half his pay, click, Card opened the door and grabbed the APXA-1 pistol from the passenger seat. This was America. Long-haul truckers usually carried some kind of weapon to ward off robbers or handle accidents. Card tucked the pistol into his waistband, pulled a baseball bat from behind his seat and headed toward the beat-up pickup, cursing under his breath, "Get this damn thing out of the road, whoever you are." Russell, a strange noise came from the nearby woods. Card tightened his grip on the gun. "Who's there?" Before he could take another step, the grip of his pistol became searing hot. Shit, it felt like he'd shoved the gun into a furnace. Card screamed, dropping the weapon. "What the hell?" Card stared at the glowing red pistol, his heart hammering in his chest. Was this some kind of supernatural crap? Vroom, a truck roared up behind him. Card spun around to see his own tanker barreling toward him at top speed. Behind the wheel was a middle-aged man with a twisted smile. What floored the accelerator, steering the rig straight at Card. The headlights blinded Card, highlighting his terrified face. "No, splat, like hitting a bag of wet flour." The truck driver didn't even have time to scream as he was hurled aside, smashing against the concrete barrier and rolling until he lay still. What stared at the corpse under his tires, his eyes as cold as ice. To him, he'd just squashed an ant. He'd decided on revenge, a decision he'd made 3 minutes after discovering his powers. Everything that night felt right. Ever since he realized he could control fire, what had been cooking up the perfect plan. First, he'd melted the door lock on Principal Guan's car and trapped him inside, then set the car ablaze, burning him alive. Sure, there were a few hiccups. That damn Geno saved the principal, but Guan wouldn't last long with those injuries. What wiggled in his seat, letting out a satisfied sigh. Yeah, his plan was going swimmingly. Now, what was ready to take out the guy he hated most, Geno Luthor? What knew Luthor Castle was a fortress? A guy like him couldn't just waltz in, his fat body made sneaking into Geno's room and torching him impossible. But that didn't mean what was out of ideas. After some thought, he'd come up with an even nastier scheme. If he couldn't infiltrate, he'd just steal a tanker truck and pull a stunt he'd seen on TV. He'd drive the tanker straight into Luthor Castle, jump out at the last second, then use his powers to ignite the gasoline. Boom. The whole place would go up in flames. The music in the cab broke What's train of thought. He pulled a crumpled map from his pocket. Okay, What muttered to himself, let's see how to get to Luthor Castle. Just as he reached for the overhead light, a voice chuckled behind him, calmly, gently. The voice said, go about a mile ahead, then turn left for about half a mile, and then turn right onto Smallville South Road. Go about half a mile and make another right into Luthor Castle. The speaker sounded eager to help, carefully detailing the directions to Luthor Castle. What broke out in a cold sweat? He was the only one in the truck, so where was that voice coming from? Snap! What flicked on the cab light, the orange glow chasing away the shadows. In the rearview mirror, he saw a young man sitting in the back seat, legs crossed. One arm rested on the window, the other on his thigh, fingers tapping on his knee. Blue eyes watched What with amusement. What's face went white. The guy in the back was Geno Luthor. Before What could figure out how he'd gotten into the cab, his hand started to burn. Just as What was about to whirl around and punch Geno, everything went black. Geno was way faster. Before What could even move, Geno's hand shot out and clamped around his neck. Bang. An irresistible force slammed What's head into the steering wheel. Honk. The truck let out a long blast of the horn. I gave you directions. Didn't your mother teach you to say thank you, coach? Geno's voice was level as he slammed What's head into the steering wheel again. Bang. Another intimate collision with the steering wheel, and this time, What's brain felt scrambled. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine. Geno repeated the motion, expressionless. What tried to pry Geno's hand off, but the arm was like a steel bar. What's flames couldn't even singe him, so Geno just picked up the pace. Bang, 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 the rhythmic thudding echoed in the cab, mixed with What's whimpers. Thud, another impact, and this time, What didn't even have the strength to moan. The skin on his forehead split open, blood covering his fat face. Click, Geno shoved the door open and kicked What out of the truck. The plump coach lay on the cold concrete, seeing double. He saw countless Genos walking toward him. Please don't kill me. What was terrified. He was afraid of Geno's ruthlessness, and the fact that his flames were useless against him. He knew he was outmatched. What struggled to speak. I was wrong. I'm sorry. He begged for Geno's forgiveness. He saw Geno slowly kneel down. He heard the young man's cold voice. If saying, sorry, was enough, what would we need cops for? Chapter 44 Father and Son. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thanks for walking me home. Lana strolled along the forest path, hands clasped behind her back, a smile playing on her lips. No problem, Clark replied, scratching his head with a shy grin. After school, he'd skipped cleaning up at the club to help Lana out in town. Walking side by side felt great to Clark, but like all good things, their walk came to an end. A two-story house, its windows glowing warmly, appeared through the trees. Well, here's my place. Lana took a few steps ahead, then turned back to Clark, a hint of embarrassment in her voice. I wanted to invite you in, but my aunt's still pretty upset about the house getting trashed. She's been on edge lately. I get it. Clark scratched his cheek thoughtfully and pointed toward his farm in the distance. All right, good night. Lana smiled and waved. Good night. Clark watched her go, feeling like he'd just tasted honey. Beaming, he turned and started running home. Bang! Before he could reach his property, a terrifying explosion ripped through the air. The deafening sound swallowed the town, like a monstrous thunderclap. What was that? Clark's eyes snapped to the source of the noise. Orange-red flames and thick smoke were painting half the sky. Whoosh! Without hesitation, Clark sprinted towards the fire, moving like a blur. He reached the scene in seconds. Crack! An overturned tanker was engulfed in flames on the highway, setting the nearby trees ablaze. If the fire wasn't contained, the woods would go up in smoke. I have to stop this. Clark's face hardened with determination. Using his super speed, he began scouring nearby houses for fire extinguishers. He raced back and forth, extinguisher in hand, a mere blur to the eye. He crisscrossed the area, grabbing extinguishers, dousing the tanker, and battling the spreading flames. Slowly, the fire began to weaken. With one final spray, the last of the flames sputtered and died. Huff. Clark stood panting, wiping the sweat from his brow. Oh, man. His gaze swept the scene until he found two charred figures in the wreckage, dehydrated beyond recognition. The bodies resembled burnt sticks. Unable to determine the cause of death, Clark could only attribute it to the disaster. They're gone. A pang of guilt stabbed at him. If I'd been closer, maybe I could have saved them. The wail of approaching police sirens cut through his thoughts. He knew he couldn't stay. With a heavy sigh, he turned and ran, dodging the arriving police cars. Clark crossed the street, only to see a familiar figure striding down the road at full tilt, the tall frame, the unmistakable swagger. Clark frowned. He had a bad feeling. Keno. Clark called out the man's name. Gino stopped in his tracks, a look of exasperation crossing his face, what was barely charcoal-grilled when Clark spotted the fire. Clark ran a hand through his hair, his voice strained. What are you doing out so late? He was worried that Gino might have been behind the explosion, but he wanted to believe Gino had a reason. Gino scoffed at Clark's naive act. He sighed and gestured towards the night sky. Me? Just enjoying a little stargazing. The small town, far from city lights, offered a brilliant view of the stars. Did you see the fire? Clark's voice was serious now. 2 people died. What's that got to do with me? Gino shrugged as he started walking again. Remember what I told you on the first day of school, Clark? I don't get involved in other people's problems. Unless I'm in the mood. It was a lie, of course. Gino just wanted to get rid of Clark. If Clark knew that he had killed Watt, he wouldn't hear the end of it. Sometimes the truth doesn't matter. Only lies can make everyone happy. Clark's gaze narrowed, searching Gino's face. Are you sure? Believe what you want. I'm going home. Gino waved dismissively, cutting off the conversation. Right. Clark watched Gino vanish into the night, deep in thought. What's the real story? Luthor Castle. As Gino approached the imposing iron gates, several Rolls-Royces were parked on the lawn within. He grinned as he recognized the Metropolis plates. Looks like someone's in for a rough night. Master, the old butler said, opening the gates. Your father is in the hall. Lex won't be in the best mood tonight. Gino chuckled. His half-brother and Lionel were oil and water. When 2 headstrong guys got together, it was always a recipe for disaster. Even before reaching the living room, Gino could hear the clanging of swords. Inside, 2 figures in protective gear were locked in a heated duel. The staccato rhythm of sword strikes quickened, and one of the fighters began to struggle. Bang! One sword pressed down, forcing the other's blade aside, then thrust forward. The blunted tip pressed against the loser's throat, and a grunt came from behind the victor's mask. Looks like you have a lot to learn. Lionel removed his mask, revealing a grim expression. Bang! The loser tore off his mask and hurled it to the floor. Lex glared at his father, his silence heavy with anger. Lionel tossed aside his sword and headed for the door, pausing to tell Lex, I expect to see a 20% reduction in staff next week, son. Passing the quietly observing Gino, Lionel flicked a glance at his younger son and said, you're in charge of keeping an eye on him. Lionel strode out with his secretary and entourage, leaving Lex fuming. Gino chuckled and sauntered over to the sofa. Nervous maids rushed to offer him fruit and milk. He bit into a crisp apple, raising an eyebrow at Lex. Looks like our loser's in a bit of a mood. Ugh, that old fool. Lex took a deep breath, grabbed his helmet, and snarled, just wait. I'll prove to him that I'm the real deal. Chapter 45 Bank Robbery. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Early morning, Kent Farm. The latest from Smallville is that a gasoline truck overturned on the highway this morning, causing a fire. Local police report that the driver and a high school PE teacher were killed. The PE teacher was reportedly a very good football coach. Jonathan put down his paper, sighing, another death in this town. Maybe it was just him, but Jonathan felt like someone was always dying in town, like it was under some kind of curse. At dinner, Clark was visibly shaken by Coach What's-Name, thinking about his meeting with Gino last night. He had a bad feeling, Coach What might have been killed by Gino. I'm full. Clark sighed, finished his peanut butter sandwich, grabbed his backpack, and left the farm. He was preoccupied, and for good reason. Clark suspected Gino killed Coach What, but Clark also felt Gino must have had his reasons. Now Clark was torn. He wanted to tell his friend not to kill people, but remembering Gray's situation, Clark felt he wasn't in a position to tell Gino anything. Clark tossed his backpack into the passenger seat, got behind the wheel, and started the off-road vehicle Gino had given him. After a big fight with his adoptive father, Jonathan had fixed the vehicle to smooth things over. Clark was lucky the punch broke the radiator instead of the engine. Smallville. Dream Bank was in a yellow storefront downtown. Click, star, the door opened, and Gino walked in with a red backpack and a mischievous grin. Mr. Keno, the bank manager, sitting in his office, quickly hung up the phone. The Luthors were valued clients. The chubby manager was surprised by the young man's unexpected arrival. Usually, if he needed money, he'd just call and someone would deliver it. How can I help you? The manager smiled warmly, flashed his pearly whites, and extended a hand. Actually, Gino smoothed his hair, smiled, and shook the manager's hand. I want to close my account and withdraw the money. What? The manager's face went pale. Is there something wrong with our bank? Please, tell me and we'll fix it. He wasn't exaggerating. If the bank's biggest depositor left, he'd be out of a job. Do I need to explain myself? Gino frowned and stared coldly at the manager. Of course not. The manager forced a smile, cursing his luck, and walked to the counter. How much do you plan to withdraw? All of it. All of it? The manager frowned at Keno. You have $500,000. You might not be able to carry it all. Gino's smile faltered. He hesitated, then, how about 50,000? The manager eyed Gino suspiciously and slowly pulled out the ledger. Sign here, please. Okay. Keno scribbled his name. The manager picked up the check and compared Keno's signature with the one from 13 years ago in the file. One was crooked and childish, the other erratic. The two signatures didn't look like they were written by the same person. The manager narrowed his eyes, growing more suspicious. He raised an eyebrow and stared at Gino's cheek. Mr. Gino, could I see your driver's license? Gino's face froze, then he smiled. Of course. He reached for his backpack, and in the next second. Ugh, a dark American III sword was in Gino's hand, and his handsome face was twisted with rage. Give me the money now. Now, beep. Beep. Beep, star, the bank alarm blared. What was that? Clark frowned, glancing toward the roadside. He saw his friend Gino running with a red backpack. Keno. Clark stopped the truck and stood in front of Keno. What are you doing? Even at his best, Gino wasn't that fast. Get out of the way. Gino glared at Clark, shoving him hard. Bang. Before Clark could react, he flew backwards, crashing through the window of a store across the street. He lay sprawled on a mannequin, staring blankly at Gino's retreating figure. Clark rubbed his eyes and the world went black and white. He saw a running skeleton soaked in dark green, clutching a schoolbag and running away. Clark scratched his head, brushed glass off his body, and under the store owner's angry glare, muttered, "What the heck was that?" Smallville High School, first period, indoor PE. The substitute teacher clapped. "All right, people, move it. Today, you're climbing the ropes. Up and down, that's it." Several thick ropes hung from the ceiling. The students followed instructions, climbing to the top and then back down. Men and women were separated into two groups. Clark said to Gino worriedly, "Something weird happened this morning." "I saw you robbing the bank." "Me?" Gino laughed, pointing to his face and rubbing his temples. "Pretty sure it's not April Fool's, and that's not funny." He, the son of a wealthy family, would become a chaebol in South Korea, but he would rob a bank? Gino joked, "Someone must be impersonating me." Clark looked thoughtful. Maybe it was a fake. Clark leaned closer. "Keno, have you noticed anything lately?" "What?" Gino frowned, subtly distancing himself. "I think I've developed a new ability." Clark leaned closer again and told Keno in a low voice everything that had happened that morning. "After I got this ability, I saw the guy's bones were green and smaller than a grown man's." "The imposter's not you." Gino looked interested. "Green bones? Interesting." Chapter 46 The Weird Wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gino seemed lost in thought, prompting Clark to ask, "What's the plan?" "It's simple, Clark." Gino snapped his fingers, his smile returning. "Since whoever it is used my face to pull off that robbery, it means they've definitely seen me. I'm usually only around Luthor Castle or at school. Take away the castle, and that leaves us with the school. The imposter has to be someone here." Understanding dawned on Clark. "Like Jerome, they've awakened some kind of power too." "Exactly." Gino gently put his hands on Clark's shoulders, then tilted Clark's head towards the wall on the right. "Hold your breath, concentrate." "What do you see?" Clark instinctively followed Gino's instructions, taking a deep breath and focusing. His pupils constricted, and his vision tunneled until Clark found his eyes were looking right through the wall, the room inside perfectly visible. It was the girls' locker room, filled with young women, beautiful, shaking out their wet hair, in various states of undress. Their long legs and curvy figures left Clark speechless. His crush, Lana, was there, a bath towel wrapped around her gorgeous figure. "Give me a break," she said. She weaved through her classmates, heading to her locker with a smile. Then, slowly, Lana let the towel drop. As it fell, Clark couldn't hold back the grin spreading across his face, the corners of his mouth stretched, revealing 2 rows of perfectly white teeth. "Like what you see?" Gino's laughter broke through the moment. Clark froze, fighting the urge to keep watching, and turned to face Gino, his face suddenly righteous. "Gino, this is wrong." Even though it was incredibly tempting, the well-meaning Clark decided to control his gaze and not look too long. "You weren't saying that a second ago," Gino chuckled, clapping Clark on the shoulder. "This is how I'm doing this, using my own ability to find this guy." Ring, ring. The bell signaling the end of class rang, and Gino released Clark, heading out of the gym by himself. "Wait, Gino, I still think we should." Clark started his sermon again, and the two walked side by side. After a while, Gino and Clark had covered almost the entire campus. They tried it on students from every grade, freshmen to seniors, and still hadn't found their target. Clark voiced his doubts. "Maybe we're wrong. Maybe it was someone from off campus." "No, I'm betting they're on campus. We probably even passed them earlier." Gino rubbed his chin. "If you suddenly came into a ton of money, would you even bother coming to class?" Clark imagined the scenario. He'd just won the lottery, $1 million. The first thing he'd do is tell his parents and have a non-stop party. Gino shrugged, pointing to the second floor. "I'm going to check with the principal's office to see who's out today." They went to the office. After explaining what they were doing, the principal enthusiastically gave Gino a list of students who had called in sick or requested leave. There were 18 names in all. Leaving the office, Keno looked at the list and started crossing names off with a pen, after a moment. Taking out the injured, the hospitalized, and those on personal leave, that leaves just 4 people. Keno held up the list, his eyes focusing on the 4 names. Marco, Rod, Jenny, Tina. Clark tilted his head, studying the list. Which one do you think it is? Well, if I had to guess, I'd say Tina. She's a huge Lana fan. Clark added seriously. From her clothes to the way she talks, Tina's always trying to be Lana, trying to be the most popular girl in school. In the hallway nearby, Lana, who was fixing her hair, spotted them. Hey, what are you guys talking about? Lana walked over, looking curious. She noticed that Clark seemed a little shifty-eyed when he saw her. Nothing. Clark scratched his cheek, glancing at Keno, who gave him a reassuring look. Lana narrowed her eyes slightly. She noticed Clark always scratched his cheek when he was feeling guilty. Keno held out his hand, offering Lana the list. Do you know where Tina lives? The town of Smallville. Buzz. Clark's SUV pulled up in front of an antique shop. Antiques have an inherent value, and that's understood in pretty much every country. This is Tina's place. Lana opened the door and got out, looking at the antique shop with a thoughtful expression. Honestly, the fact that someone was imitating her bugged her. The 3 pushed open the door, the chimes jingling as they entered. It was a medium-sized shop, crammed with antiques. Keno even noticed a white jade guanine statue on one of the shelves. Hey there, can I help you? Tina's mother, a petite woman, came out of the side room with a smile. When the woman walked to the counter, Keno immediately noticed she was checking him and Clark out. Her eyes kept darting away and she seemed nervous. This woman, Lana jumped in. Hello, Mrs. Loren, we're classmates of Tina's. She wasn't in class today, and we thought we'd check on her. Oh, you mean Tina? Mrs. Loren gave an awkward smile. She went to visit her grandmother today. Maybe she'll be back tomorrow. Mrs. Loren, do you have many antiques here? Keno interrupted, walking over to an antique in the corner. Can you tell me about this one? I really like it. Oh, that's not for sale. I'm sorry, but you really have to leave now. Mrs. Loren rubbed her chest. I have to go to the doctor for a checkup in a little while, so. It was pretty clear they weren't welcome, so the 3 left the antique shop. Back in Clark's SUV, Lana asked, was it just me, or did Mrs. Loren seem really nervous? It wasn't just Keno. Lana had also noticed something off about the woman. Clark agreed. Yeah, that was weird. An antique shop that doesn't sell antiques and is trying to get rid of us. Keno turned back to look at the shop, his sharp eyes pierced through the front door, focusing on Mrs. Loren through all the antiques, a 40-year-old woman in black lace underwear. That was ridiculous. Okay, confirmed. Keno thought to himself, activating his ability again. Through the muscles and skin, he saw a green skeleton in his vision. A smile spread across Geno's face. I found you. Tina Loren. Chapter 47 How to Use Tina. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Late night in the antique shop. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The old clocks chimed softly. Upstairs, in the second-floor apartment, Tina, a brunette, sat cross-legged on the carpet. A few candles flickered, chasing away the shadows, perhaps a sign of her nerves. At her feet lay a small mountain of cash. She inhaled the musty, old paper scent, her pretty face etched with uncertainty. This money. What do I even do with it? Should she blow it on makeup? Splurge on fancy food? Pack up and move far, far away? Click. A noise from downstairs. Who's there? Tina's eyes narrowed. She scrambled to shove the money scattered on the floor into her backpack. She jumped to her feet, her fists clenched, knuckles popping. Ever since discovering her powers, the ability to change her appearance, her courage had grown right alongside them. Tina cautiously opened the door and headed downstairs, turning on the lights as she went. She scanned the antique shop. Everything seemed normal. Her mother's precious antiques sat serenely on the shelves, the front door locked tight, no signs of a break-in. Relief washed over her. She practically skipped back upstairs. My money. A happy grin spread across her face. It was all hers, and soon she could start over. Tina shoved the backpack under the bed, then flopped down on the mattress with a sigh. So much had happened in the last few days. She was exhausted. Soon, her eyelids grew heavy, her thoughts jumbled, and she drifted into a deep sleep. The sound of her own breathing filled the room as a long dream began. She was on a beach, turquoise water, a gentle breeze, and a rainbow arcing across the sky in the distance. She dove into the ocean in her swimsuit, schools of fish surrounded her, and everything felt like a fairy tale, but in an instant, the sky turned dark. Lightning flashed, and a gale howled down from the storm clouds overhead. An invisible force dragged her down. Seawater filled her mouth and nose, the icy water stinging her skin. She choked and struggled, but her body grew heavier and heavier. Finally, as if reaching a breaking point, her eyes snapped open. In the darkness, she saw a pair of large hands clamped over her mouth and nose. A playful voice chuckled, "I thought you'd never wake up." Someone else was in her room. Tina's muscles tensed. She balled her hands into fists, bang, star, her right fist connected hard with the blurry figure in the darkness, but the man seemed to have anticipated her move, easily catching her wrist with his left hand. The figure shook his head. "Play nice, Tina. Or I can't guarantee I won't crush your jaw." As if to prove his point, the hand covering her mouth and nose tightened slightly. A sharp pain shot up her chin. Tina whimpered in terror, nodding quickly to show she understood. "Good girl." He slowly released her. Gasp, wheeze. The suffocating grip of terror faded. Tina gulped in the precious air. Snap, star, the lights flicked on, revealing her uninvited guest. A familiar young man with blonde hair and a handsome face leaned against the table next to the lamp, a professional-looking camera in his hand. He stared at her blankly, his blue eyes cold, as if she were nothing more than a tool. "It's you." Tina gasped. It was the guy she'd impersonated this morning, Keno Luthor. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her lips trembling. She believed in her powers, but he'd easily caught her punch. "Keno must be a super, too. Because someone stole my stuff." Keno smiled, gesturing towards the backpack on the floor. "You robbed us of 50 grand. Normally, he only killed people who threatened his family, but he wasn't happy that this woman had pretended to be him to rob a bank. Let's see. Should I break your hand? Or maybe your face?" Keno leaned in, his face close to Tina's. "Don't. Please don't hurt me." Tina's teeth chattered. She felt a wave of intense malice radiating off him, raising goosebumps on her skin. She didn't want to die. "Not hurt you." Keno straightened up, his expression icy. "You stole my money and damaged my reputation. You're going to pay the price." His tone was flat. The next second, snap, star, his iron grip closed around Tina's neck, lifting her into the air like a kitten. Gah! Tina's throat burned like it was being crushed. She couldn't breathe. Her face turned blue from lack of oxygen. "I'm giving you 2 options." Keno held up a finger. "Option 1, die right here. Option 2, work for me." Tina didn't hesitate. Her survival instincts kicked in, and she choked out, I choose 2. Wise choice." His grip loosened, and Tina collapsed on the bed, her eyes filled with resentment. This jerk was so unpredictable. "What do you want me to do?" Tina was sharp. If she couldn't fight him, she'd survive by obeying. A million thoughts raced through the head of this Lana fan, like turning herself into Lana or having other women entertain Keno. "Take off your clothes, look at this woman, and become her," Keno said, grabbing the camera from the table. 10 minutes later. "Follow me." Keno pushed the door open and gestured for Tina to follow. She bit her lip, threw on her clothes, and trailed after him. The Luthor Industrial Group, a sprawling fertilizer company with hundreds of employees, was the biggest employer in town. Of course, no one worked there this late except for the 40-year-old security guard, Buzz, the silver Bugatti roared into the parking lot. "We're here." Gino opened the car door and headed toward the factory. "This is Luthor Industries." Tina was confused. Why had he brought her here? Afraid to ask, she followed him into the silent factory. They stepped into the elevator. Tina watched Gino swipe a silver card on the reader, beep, system verified. Gino pressed the button for the first floor. He turned, giving Tina a mysterious smile. "You're about to see the truth about this town." Chapter 48 True Power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The basement's actually on the first floor here. The elevator doors creaked open, and Tina hesitantly followed Keno out. Her eyes went wide, totally stunned by what she saw. It was a massive experimental lab. Rows of tanks filled with strange experiments were arranged neatly in the center. Scientists in white coats were buzzing around, organized and focused. The place was like an ant farm, all business with a clear purpose. "So, what are those things?" Tina asked, horrified, staring at two specimens submerged in jars. One held a naked, headless corpse with pale skin, floating in murky green liquid. The other looked like something out of a horror movie, a flayed zombie, all exposed muscle and bone. Keno smirked. "Pretty rich, killing your own mom and then being scared of a couple of dead bodies." Tina hung her head, silent. She wanted to say it was an accident, that she just accidentally pushed her mother down the stairs, but the words caught in her throat. "Lex." Keno spotted the lab's owner, his sleazy brother's bald head sticking out from the crowd. Lex glanced at Keno, then at Tina, and raised an eyebrow. "This the girl?" "Yeah, she can morph into anyone she's ever seen." Keno shrugged. "Works for me." Keno's plan was simple, plant Tina as an informant with Talia, but just as Keno was worried about Talia, he also wanted a way to control Tina. Tina kept her head down, but her ears were perked, soaking in every word. She couldn't stop thinking about the test just 10 minutes before, when Keno had pulled out a camera and pushed her to use her abilities. She'd shifted from one woman in a photo to Lana, then Chloe, until she couldn't hold the transformations anymore. Her head swam, and she started to panic that they'd leave her there, turn her into lab rat. "Alright, let's get this show on the road." Lex waved a hand, and two scientists approached, holding a syringe. "Wait, what are you going to do to me?" "I don't want a shot." Tina's eyes widened in terror, shaking her head and backing away. "Relax." Keno glanced at Tina. "This needle contains a little something called a nanobomb. It'll be injected into your neck." Keno smiled, his voice deceptively gentle, which just made Tina shiver. "After that, we can control it via satellite. No matter where you are, all we gotta do is press a button, and boom, head goes one way, body the other." Keno put his fingers together and then splayed them out, mimicking an explosion. Honestly, the idea came from watching Suicide Squad. Amanda Waller, that ruthless woman, used the same trick to keep a bunch of supervillains in line. Keno thought it was brilliant, and he pitched the idea to Lex soon after Talia left. From now on, anyone who stepped out of line got a nanobomb, and his brother hadn't disappointed. Lex, using his brains, manpower, and a ton of money, had whipped up the nanobomb in a week and linked it to the LexCorp satellite. Remote detonation, anytime, anywhere. A nanobomb? Tears welled up in Tina's eyes as she shook her head wildly. "No. I don't want that thing inside me. That's insane, not just imagining it." One day, if she wasn't useful anymore, or knew too much, Keno could just push a button and send her straight to hell. The thought of her life in someone else's hands terrified her. Haha. Keno just shook his head and laughed at her tears. "Looks like you still don't get it." He stepped close to Tina and slapped her hard across the face. Smack! Tina stumbled and fell, a red mark blooming on her cheek. Shaking her head to clear her messy hair, she saw Keno squatting, smiling cruelly. "This isn't a negotiation. It's an order." The girl didn't even think, was it that easy to get his money? Tina covered her cheek, biting her lip. I understand. She slowly got to her feet, watching the two scientists approach. Resigned, she steeled herself for whatever came next. After seeing the horrors of that lab, Tina didn't doubt for a second that Keno was serious. It stings. Tina rubbed her neck, unsure if it was all in her head. But ever since the needle went in, she felt uneasy. Keno ignored her resentful glare and took her back to his mansion. Master. The old butler greeted them at the door. Keno pointed at the girl. This is Tina. She's a classmate of mine. Get her a room on the first floor. She'll be staying here tonight. Very well. The butler nodded and led Tina away. Keno went back to his room, fired up his computer, and sent a message to Talia, Alcatraz. In the secret base of the League of Assassins, the leader, Ra's al Ghul, stared down at the young man in front of him with cold eyes. You wish to learn martial arts? Why? For myself, the young man said calmly. And for what must be done? Intriguing. Ra's al Ghul hadn't seen such a driven young man in ages. He could see a fire burning in the young man's eyes, a flame of revenge. Hot enough to burn the world. Ra's al Ghul, who always valued talent, nodded and sneered. Then go and face the League's initiation trial. Survive that, and I will personally train you. The young man nodded and left. Once he was gone, Ra's al Ghul turned to the shadowed corner behind him. Your thoughts on this one? On what? A figure emerged from the darkness, and in the moonlight, a pair of legs slowly walked toward Ra's al Ghul. Looking upward, that it was Talia, and her presence had become even colder. A faint smile played on her lips. Her foolish father didn't understand true strength, invulnerability, inhuman speed and reflexes, a terrifying sense of oppression. Honestly, Talia saw nothing remarkable in the young man, but she knew better than to disobey her father, so she smiled and said, I concur with your judgment, leader. Hearing her answer, Ra's al Ghul grunted in satisfaction and dismissed his daughter. DC Fun fact: when Bruce was young, he traveled the world and learned fighting knowledge from Ra's al Ghul of the League of Assassins. Chapter 49 Prom Invitation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Talia went back to her room. The house, situated on the shady side of the island, had a somber vibe. She flicked on the light, squinting as her eyes adjusted. Talia sat softly on the bed, her green eyes fixed on a photo riddled with holes on the wall. The young man in the picture was handsome, with long blonde hair and a white shirt. He looked like an angel. Ugh. Talia scoffed and pulled darts from her pocket. With a thwack, a dart sunk into the young man's crotch in the photo. Scumbag, she hissed through gritted teeth, her feelings a jumble of resentment and confusion. Ding ding that her phone buzzed. Talia glanced at the message, frowning before a sneer twisted her lips. Recommend an assistant, huh? Talia muttered to herself, more like send a spy to keep tabs on me. Remembering Geno's threat, Talia swallowed her pride and agreed, arranging a meeting with Tina. The first rays of sunlight kissed Luthor Castle. Geno, still in his pajamas, rinsed toothpaste from his mouth. Sir, the butler approached with a stack of invitations. Your schedule indicates you'd like to throw a dance for your classmates. I've prepared hundreds of invitations, and the time is set for 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Right, I almost forgot, Geno said, smiling and taking the invitations. The gold-trimmed invitations looked extravagant. Geno gazed out the window. Servants were setting up tables and chairs on the lawn. Tomorrow night's going to be a blast. Geno grinned, he was looking forward to the dance. Oh, and one more thing, Geno said to his butler. Get a plane ticket to London for Tina. Have her meet at the cafe on 16th Street in London, and then have her call this number to reach her supervisor. After his conversation with Talia last night, Geno had already mapped out Tina's next move. As you wish. Buzz. The engine of a Bugatti roared as it pulled into the campus. Another school day. Geno wasn't early, wasn't late. Plenty of students were already milling around. Morning, Geno. Chloe jumped out from behind him, playfully slapping his shoulder. Should I pretend to be surprised? Gino chuckled, turning to face the campus trio. I knew I couldn't get you, Chloe sighed. The four walked together, chatting. Chloe leaned in conspiratorially, lowering her voice. Did you hear? Someone broke into Lauren's antique store last night and found Mrs. Lauren's body in a cabinet. Wow, did they catch the killer? Gino's expression remained unchanged. Clark, meanwhile, was studying Gino, trying to read his reaction. Clark didn't know that the Zibin family were all natural actors. The cops think Lauren's daughter did it. Gino shrugged. That's terrible news. But I have good news, too. Gino winked and pulled out a stack of gold invitations from his pocket. The exquisitely designed invitations gleamed in the morning sun. What are those? Chloe's eyes widened, and she eagerly grabbed one. She scanned the paper and read aloud, Gino Luthor cordially invites you to a dance at Luthor Castle at 10 p.m. on May 24th. Her voice went up an octave. Oh my God, it's a prom invitation. Hearing Chloe's excitement, little Black Pete and Clark's eyes also lit up. To teenage boys with raging hormones, a prom meant a chance to get closer to that special girl. Clark immediately thought of Lana. He imagined holding Lana's hands, dancing on the sprawling lawn of Luthor Castle. Gulp. Clark swallowed, pushing Tina to the back of his mind. Tina. Was Tina as important as Keno's dance? Chloe's eyes darted around. She took a deep breath, summoning her courage, and looked at Keno. So, do you have a date? Her big eyes were full of hope. A date? Nah, Gino shook his head, looked at Chloe, and smiled. Want to go with me? He knew what Chloe was thinking, but Gino wasn't interested in dating right now. Chloe nodded enthusiastically. Of course. Gino ruffled Chloe's short blonde hair. Sounds good to me. Peter hesitated, then asked, but Gino, with all these invitations, who are you planning to give them to? To be honest, I'm not handing them out myself. Gino waved the stack of invitations, glancing at Clark as if casually. Maybe I need a few helpers to distribute these. He had a reason for this. If he did it himself, he'd be swarmed by girls begging for a spot. Gino didn't want to waste his time on that, so he'd let his friends bask in the attention, beauty. He'd seen enough of it to last a lifetime. Beauty wasn't a scarce resource for the elite. Ahem, I'm in. Clark raised his hand immediately, puffing out his chest to show his eagerness. Little Black Pete also raised his hand. This was a golden opportunity. Why not? Gino divided the invitations into two piles and handed them to the two of them, setting a condition. First off, no drug users are allowed in Luthor Castle, and neither are bullies. And no bringing your own booze or herbs. American high schoolers love to chase thrills, but Keno didn't want a bunch of addicts running around his castle. Clark and Peter nodded in agreement. Don't worry, Gino, we'll keep things under control. Gino smiled. I'm not worried about Peter, but Clark doesn't have a backbone and is easily swayed. He nudged Clark playfully with his arm and whispered, maybe you can ask Lana who should come to the dance. Good idea. Clark sucked in a breath and gripped the gold invitation tightly. Just as Gino said, this was a chance to get closer to Lana. Chapter 50 Prom Incident. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Smallville High, the news about Keno throwing a dance spread across campus like wildfire. Hey, you hear about the dance that rich kid's throwing? OMG, it's gonna be insane. Word is, there's gonna be expensive food and fancy wine. Everyone was buzzing about the party. The big question on everyone's mind, who's getting an invite, and who's gonna be left out. In high school, your popularity is basically tied to whether you're prom material. Over at the playground, Clark and Pete were swamped. Come on, Pete, I'm begging you for an invite. A girl batted her eyelashes at Pete, eyeing the pile of invitations. The crowd was a chaotic swarm. Dude. Pete groaned to Clark. I think Gino knew this would happen. That's why he pawned this off on us. Pete grumbled, and he took Chloe dress shopping. Clark barely heard him. He was standing with Lana, signing people up, and even though he was swamped, he was on cloud 9. Right after splitting with Keno, Clark tracked down Lana and begged for her help. Lana suggested they take a headcount first, then narrow down the list. "Hey, can I sign up?" A soft voice broke through the noise. Clark looked up to see a slightly overweight girl standing timidly in the crowd. She wore a purple shirt and baggy jeans, her head down, her double chin prominent. She was definitely plus size, and her shifty eyes screamed insecurity. "Whoa, what do we have here?" A basketball player sneered. "A whale wants to crash the party. What are you gonna do there? Show off your eating skills." The crowd erupted in laughter. Some people have no empathy. "Hey, cut it out!" Pete snapped, glaring at the guy. "Keep it up, and you're not getting an invite." The basketball player shrugged. "Wow, didn't know you were into that." "Ha ha ha." More laughter. The girl was stung by the mockery. She covered her face and fled the playground. "Julie!" Pete started to go after her, but he was instantly mobbed by people clamoring for invitations. Julie ran all the way home, burst into her room, and threw herself on the bed, sobbing. "No one likes me. I'm just a fat pig." Tears soaked her pillow. Finally, she sat up, a new resolve in her eyes. "No. I'm gonna lose weight." She raced downstairs and out to her vegetable garden. She knelt and pulled out some veggies. She was going to juice them to replace her meals. Stupid rocks. She tossed the stones she found in the dirt into the trash. Then, clutching her vegetables, Julie headed into the kitchen. Buzz, star. The juicer pulverized the vegetables into a thick, green concoction. Julie took a deep breath, looked at the vile green liquid, and chugged it, eyes squeezed shut. She smacked her lips, wiped a leaf from her mouth, and whispered, "Hope this works." The next morning, Julie woke up, slipped on her shoes, and did the first thing she'd been doing. She stepped on the scale. She lost weight. "This is amazing." She practically skipped to the mirror and lifted her pajama top. Her stomach had noticeably shrunk, and she even saw a hint of abs. Her double chin was gone, and her thighs were slimmer. "This is incredible." Julie pumped her fists, giddy with excitement. Then, she wondered how she had lost weight. The juice. Her eyes widened. She dashed downstairs. "If I lose weight, I might actually get an invite to the dance." Luthor Mansion, at the breakfast table. "You're having a dance tonight?" Lex said, forking up a bite of scrambled eggs. "Yeah, this place is a tomb." "Need some life," Keno replied. "You wanna come? I can get you an invite." "Nah." Lex dabbed his mouth with a napkin. "I'm starting a local farmers' co-op to try and get the company out of the red and shut up the bloodsuckers." Lex stared at Keno. "Got a date?" "Yup. A girl from school." Lex smirked. "Lucky girl. So, half the invites are out." At school, Keno draped an arm around Clark's shoulders. "Let me guess. Lana's on the list, right?" "Hey, Keno, come on," Clark said. "Lana's great. She deserves to be there." Chloe and Pete popped up. "You are not gonna believe this," Chloe said excitedly, glancing at Pete. "Someone actually likes Pete." "Hey!" Pete protested. "I'm a catch, okay?" "Oh." Keno raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Here." Pete rubbed his cheek. "This girl Julie asked me if I can be her date. She lost a ton of weight overnight." "A plus-sized hottie," Chloe said, then paused. "I can't think of any way someone could lose weight that fast." Clark clapped Pete on the back. "Congrats, man.